In this tutorial, we are going to learn how to keep track of logged in users. So after a user submits the login form and we check their password and see that it's correct, we need a way to make sure that when they go to other pages on the website that we'll still know who they are and that they are logged in. So to do that, we are going to use a login manager using the Flask Login extension. So let me go to the Flask app and start doing some imports. We're going to import from Flask Login. So go ahead and say, so from Flask Login, import the login manager, the user mixin, the current user function, the login user function, and the logout user function. All right, next we are going to initialize the login manager. So right down here somewhere, I'll just do it right here. I'm going to say I'll use the variable name login, and I'm going to do login manager and pass in the app. And then I'm going to go down to the user class, and I'm going to add a few fields to the user class that can keep track if whether a user is logged in. But I don't have to do anything because someone else has already done it. They've made a user mixing class, and all I have to do is add it to the classes that this user class extends, and then all of it will just happen automatically. And if you want to learn more about this user mixing class and what it actually adds, you can go to a search for it. Just search for Flask Login and user mixin, and you can figure out a little bit more about what it does. But that's just going to help the login manager be able to keep track of who's logged in and who's logged out and who the logged in user is. The only thing we need to do is provide a function that the login manager can use to load users from the database. So I'm going to use that login variable that we created when we initialized the login manager, and I'm going to specify the user loader. And I'm going to define a function. I'll just call it load user because that's what it's going to do, and it's going to take a user ID. So it's going to pass in a user ID as a string, and then I have to return the user that corresponds to that user ID. So I'm going to go to the user table in the database. I'm going to query the table, and I'm going to filter by the user that has that ID. And because they're passing it in as a string, and you would have to look at the documentation of the Flask Login Manager to know this, I'm going to convert it to an integer because we store the IDs of our users as integers in the table. So I'm going to first convert the user ID that was passed into this function to an integer, and then I'm going to filter by all the IDs that equal this integer. And there should only be one of them because everyone has a different ID. And that's going to return a list of just one user, and I'm going to get the first one from it. So there is the user loader function. And the next thing I want to do is modify the login and the register routes so that they use the login function, the login user function up here, to actually log in the user. So let's go first to the login route. So I'll scroll down to the login route, and I'm going to find this place right here where after the user has verified their password, right here all I do is say a welcome message to them. So that's not good enough because they're not actually logged in. So I'm going to add login user right here, and the user that I'm going to log in is the one that was created right up here. It was queried from the table. Remember that if there's not a user or the password's wrong, then I flash this error to the user. So if this didn't happen, I'm going to get to here, I'm going to log in the user, and then instead of sending a welcome message, I'm going to send them somewhere that is useful. I'm going to redirect them. So I'm going to redirect them to the home page. So I'll get the URL for the home page. That's the name of my function that does the home page. And so what this will do is log in the user and then redirect them to the home page. One last thing is you probably don't want to let users that are already logged in visit the login page. So at the beginning here, I'm going to add something, and I'm going to use the current user that I imported from the Flask Login Manager. Come down here, and I'm going to check to see if the current user is already authenticated, which means they're already logged in. So if they're already logged in and somehow they managed to get to this login page, maybe they just typed /login manually, then I'm just going to return them back to the home page because there's no reason for them to be on this page. So I'll return a redirect to the URL for the home page. All right, so those are the changes to the login form. Now I'm going to move down to the register. Before, when we would register, we put the new user into the database, but that person should automatically get logged in when they just register. So I'm going to add one extra line right here. So log in the user, and so new user. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. If the user is already authenticated, there's really no reason for them to be doing anything on a register page, so I'll just redirect them to the home page. All right, go ahead and save that. All right, now, right now, so if you log in, so let's go try this out. So restart Flask app, and let's go to the login page. And right here I can log in. I think Mike, and with a password will get me logged in. So it did everything and it took me to the home page, but it's really hard for a user to know that they're actually logged in, because this just looks like the normal home page to me. So what we're going to do is change the home page so that if you're logged in, it shows a welcome message for just you. So let's go to the index.html, and let's change it so that it adds a welcome message. So right here inside of the container, I'm going to add a little bit of Jinja templating code. So I'm going to say if the current user is authenticated, then I'm going to do one thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a paragraph that says welcome, and I'm going to actually use the current user's username. That way they'll be able to tell that this is a message specifically for them. If you see your username, then you know for sure that you're logged in. And then I'm going to say else. So if the current user is not authenticated, then the message that I want to give to them is I'll just say welcome. So welcome to my site, which is the name of the site. And then this line here that says this is going to be an amazing microblog, it's already starting to become one, so we'll just delete that. And then I just need to finish the if statement. So in Jinja, you have to put an end for all of your things. So there's an end if here that corresponds to this if up here. There's an end block that corresponds to this block up here. All right, so go ahead and save and refresh that. Now if I come back to the home page and refresh, it should say welcome Mike, which is my username. So now I definitely feel like I'm logged in. The only thing that's a little bit weird is I notice that there's still a link for me to log in and to register. Like if I click on this, log in, it takes me there, and then it notices that I'm logged in, so it takes me right back to the home page. Also, how can I log out? There's no way to log out right now. So let's identify solutions to those things. First, we're going to add a log out route. So I'll come into Flask app, find the login route, and then right under that, I'm just going to add a route that logs out a user. Oh, and the routes have to start with a slash. So log out, and so I'll define the function, and I will just call it log out. And all I have to do is call the log out user function. And then, and notice how I don't have to say which user it is, because it will just log out whatever user is logged in right now. And then I will just return a redirect to the home page. So we'll go right back to the home page. So URL for the home page. All right, so that's the log out function. So I'll go ahead and save, refresh. So if I go back to here, I can say log out and type it in manually. And notice how it's logged me out. I don't have my personalized message anymore. So let me go to the login screen, type Mike, and then password, and go ahead and sign in. I'm logged in again. The last thing that I want to do is change the navigation bar so that when I'm logged in, instead of saying log in and register up here, it's going to say log out. So let me go up here. So Flask app, I want to go to my navigation bar. And I'm going to add one more line here. I'm going to create a logout view, which is going to create a link that people can click on the navigation bar, and it's going to call on the logout function if they click on it. Then I will save, and then instead of returning the same nav bar to everyone, I'm going to put a little bit of logic in here. And I'm going to say if the current user is authenticated, then I'm going to return one nav bar. So, and then else, I'm going to return a different one. So let's see, I'll make a copy of this. So if the user is already authenticated, I don't need the register and the login view. I instead need the log out view. So let me save that. Then restart the app. Go back to the home page and refresh. I'm still logged in, and I see now there is a log out menu right here. As soon as I click it, the navigation bar changes and it allows me to log in. I can click on the login page. I can log back in, sign in. Notice that it changes back to log out immediately. So now it's easier for the user to tell that they're logged in because they have an option to log out and they see a personalized message just for them. So last thing I'm going to do is commit these changes. Go to the Bash console. I'm going to do git status to make sure those are the things that I've changed. Yep, I'm going to type git diff. And I'm going to see that I added the login manager stuff, keep hitting the space bar. Yep, I did some if the user is authenticated, different navigation bars. All of that looks good, so I'll hit Q to quit, and then I'm ready to add all of those changes and commit them with the message that I'm now using Flask Login to track the logged in users. All right, that's the end of the tutorial.